First, let me say a pleasant welcome. Thanks for joining us. My name is Alexander Greb. I am the Global Practice Lead at Westernacher Consulting for Intelligent ERP Innovation and Value. And I'm, yes, one of the hosts for today's webinar, which covers the topic Rise with SAP, powered by Westernacher. What I'm especially thrilled about is I really enjoy doing webinars, but webinars are especially joyful and fun when you're able to do it with friends. So I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Martin Schamach, who is Head of Cloud Core and RISE MEE of SAP. Martin, I hope you can hear me. And maybe like to introduce ourselves, Martin, you are let's say one of a kind, because normally you either find in the SAP world technical experts, coders, and so on, or you find salespeople. Interestingly, you are quite able in both topics. So what's your vita in that aspect?
Yes, so again, good morning from my side, and thank you for having me. Yes, I've started off as a consultant in SAP in finance and controlling, so I have quite extensive, I'm not sure I still have it, but I had quite extensive knowledge in product costing and COPA, with also some coding experience in ABAP, in the good old ABAP, and then transitioned into a sales role, and now I'm in the regional sales role here, running the RISE business in the region Middle and Eastern Europe.
Wonderful. Concerning our agenda today, we will basically have like three main parts. The first part will be done by me, because I want, before we really go into the, let's say, ingredients and the content of the RISE offering of SAP, into basically the reasons why something like RISE with SAP is relevant for everybody. Why there's basically, from my perspective, no reason around, no way around it. Before Martin will go in introducing the strategy, the content, and the special value of the RISE with SAP offering. The third part will be that I want to talk about a few sentences about how we from Westernacher Consulting can help you. And then will we go over to the part where we, of course, will welcome any questions that you hopefully have, and we'll discuss about that. So please, if you have any questions, post them in the questions part on the right side of your screen. You see here something like a question file where you can ask your questions, and we will collect them, and in the end we will put them all together and answer it to you. Good. I will mute more or less my camera because of bandwidth issues before I start. So do not to be shocked when it disappears now. Let's start with the first part. The first part, I hope now it goes. The first part, like we said, we'll start with the question like basically why RISE with SAP? And this is more or less a question which is not only a question about why this offering of SAP should be interesting for everybody of us, but also like why is digitalization a part? And to be honest, this was a question that probably now will be differently answered than, for example, like 18 years or 18 months ago, when the situation we were in was quite much more comforting than we are today. For me, one thing as an, let's say, introduction to it was quite interesting was this picture that I saw recently. It was from a German sports club who were inviting their members to a yearly meeting, of course virtually. And what they did was, because they of course obviously were trying to use digital tools and digital methods to welcome their members, they were posting in the local newspaper the full link to a Microsoft Teams session to be able to make their meeting in a virtual format. And in a certain way, this is of course funny to look at, because it's obviously that there was the best intent, but the execution was, let's call it subpar, and probably not really helpful. So this shows us that using just a application does not mean that you're digitalized yet. It means that you embrace digitalization fully from the mindset, from the setting, and from the usage. So especially if you are in Germany like me, like probably in the last 12 months, you hurtfully realized that we are still far away from a, let's say, purely digitalized or purely digitalized stage or something like digitalized excellence. But the question is, of course, what are the surroundings? What are the parameters of it, and why and how should we approach the topic digitalization, so that we are in the end, as players in this kind of environment, be able to bring the horsepower of digitalization to the street, because that's all what it's all about. And I think there are basically two different motivations to go or to embark this topic the right way. And we have to be quite honest. The one motivation that's, let's say, necessary to look at, it's not really a positive motivation, because it's about disruptions everywhere. We have no other choice than to transform ourselves to prepare for the future challenges. But of course, what we also want to talk about is that there's a positive motivations. Huge opportunities are ahead. Change means chances and opportunities. And digitalization offers the possibilities to define your game and your business. So we want to look at both in this first part. So disruptions everywhere. I think when the name, or like the wording disruption, is something that we of course use since a few years, and probably like before Corona we have used it in a different way, because, or maybe let's call it, we use it a little bit one-sided, because we were always thinking, and our assumption was that disruption comes mainly from innovation, like new players come on the stage and come up with new technology or new business model. So this was more or less the assumption that disruptions more or less affecting us mostly from the innovation side. But like this Wall Street Journal of 2019, which I found already at this time quite interesting, and the quotation comes, in my opinion, even more interesting now. Already at that time said, like, embracing digitalization is a must for enterprises, because disruption can come from all sides. And I think we really found that out quite hurtfully in the last 12 months. And I think even if we are now probably seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, we are basically not we're not completely through, because the next disruption, which is probably coming, I'm just doing assumptions here, probably coming like from the climate change side, will also affect us and mean that we have to redefine ourselves, to reinvent yourself. So we are forced to do it, and it's not something that we have the choice there, but we do not have the choice. The only choice that we have is how we do it, and that we should do it right. So when we are talking that disruption is coming from everywhere, we are basically affected by two sides of disruption: the Big Bang disruption and the gradual disruption. The Big Bang disruption means that an outside effect or an innovation comes up that means that existing technological levels or existing business models are more or less crashing down within a short time after that new technology have arisen. So there are lots of examples which are quite often popular and also interesting to read. And there are many cases about this. If you look at the Harvard Business Review, like for example, Blockbuster versus Netflix. The moment Netflix came up, Blockbuster's existence was just a matter of a few years before they were just diminished to, I think at the moment, one remaining store that they have. And there are also other examples like Kodak in digital photography. Yeah, when digital photography came up, Kodak, who was in the 90s one of the best, let's say, best practice companies for process excellence and strategic excellence, within a few years they were just a shadow of themselves, which is especially ironic in that case, because Kodak invented the digital photography, but for some reason they were not able to embrace the technology for their own sake, but they were more or less eaten by their own ghosts. But those are the spectacular cases. The more often happening cases, in my opinion, the more dangerous cases are the gradual disruption cases, because they are coming slowly, and basically everybody of us is affected. Even SAP is affected by that. Like, this means that a new technology or business model is coming up, or external effects make a change in customer demand to a new kind of product. that existing technologies or business models do not crash down immediately, but they do not realize those growth rates anymore, that you're able to gain enough liquidity out of it to be able to invest even midterm in innovation. And we see that, for example, in the car industry, like diesel and gasoline cars, which were the mainstay, for example, of the German car manufacturers. They probably are not really the future. While the electric cars, or let's say the alternative fueled cars, are quite on the rise. And if the German manufacturers, who were barely able to walk because they were so strong and so dominant a few years ago, they're quite in trouble now, and they really have to transform themselves. And SAP is in more or less the same situation. Probably Martin will tell us something, because the SAP business model, like selling licenses for on-premise software, probably is not the business model for the next few years anymore. But everybody's going to the cloud, and if SAP is not the best or one of the best in the cloud, they also will have their problems. So everybody is caught in this kind of gradual disruption. So what is the strategy that companies in digitalization have to drive to be able to cope with all of that? Well, basically, it's about two sides. It's about being able to transform, to run and transform your core business. You still, of course, you cannot get rid of it immediately, because you need it as your cash cow. You need it to drive it highly automated, to win as most liquidity out of it, to invest on the other side in new business. You need, let's say, this kind of second area where you're able to build up and scale that new kind of business, so that the second area, the second part where you're able to innovate, we are able to fail, because failure is so important. So you learn how your path should look like in the future. This right side, the scale new business side, then of course has to be able to feed your core business, because that's what you do here on this side is more or less the core business of the future. So in the end, you need something of a circle where this kind of, let's say, highly innovative top end on the right side is feeding the core business bottom end on the left side. So you are in a same kind of innovation circle, which is driving your enterprise value release up. So it means that you're, on the one hand, you're highly automated, but on the other hand, you're highly agile. So you are able to grow the core, to scale it new, and to do that wise pivot, that shift from your core business in a very wise and driven way to the new business. The question is though, like, do we really need that new kind of technologies that, for example, SAP is producing? Do we need this for? Or can we like continue using our legacy applications like ECC or R3 and achieve the same thing? Because this is a question that quite often is asked, of course, in that kind of effect. And I think my answer is quite clear in that aspect, because from my experience in 20 years of talking with C-level players, especially in the last years, two main problem fields have arisen, which keep from excelling, which hindering us from becoming digital experts or digital champions with the legacy technologies. And the main problems are basically scattered information, batch orientation. Scattered information means that when I want to see where I am at, what my situation is, I cannot do this at one glance. I have to look at different areas. And I think everybody who's working in an enterprise knows that, for example, when you are working with legacy technology and want to see how a status of a order, for example, is, you can look there in your logistics systems, for example, in your APO. There you find out how your orders are running, and then of course you can take a look into the CRM. There you find all the customer information, but you do not have that kind of one view approach where you find everything. And the problem for this is that at the time when the technology was made that this applications are based on, at that time there was not the technology available to build a data model that was able to put all these different demands from all the line of businesses together. So we had to make special data models. So there was special data models, which was made for the logistic people. There was one data model that was made for the sales people, and those became, for example, the APO, and the other one the CRM, and the third one the HR systems. And this worked quite well because we were at that time in the late 80s, early 90s. But the times have changed, and the volume of the data which we want to work with has grown. And so we are running into problems there, and we cannot really move there. And we realize that when we want to see where we are, because that's what when we need batches, because batches are the foundation that bring all this kind of data together. And that makes our business process complex, because batches can just run maybe once a day or maybe even once a week. If you look, for example, at the MRP, the material resource planning batch, which is our most, probably sometimes most famous and notorious batch run, because it's the heart and core of any producing or logistic active company. In the early 90s, this was something which was running like 3 or 4 times a day, because it was no problem. It ran about an hour. Today, we are in a status that most of our customers are able to run it in the night, but sometimes they do not have a slot in the night where everybody sleeps, which is as long as they would need for it. So they are forced to run it on the weekend. And just imagine, like, when your MRP is running on the weekend, your planner comes on into his office on Monday. He sees his situation, he sees his orders, he sees his issues, and then he starts, of course, working. But nothing of that kind of working is put into action before that batch is run, which means on the weekend. So everything what this guy does not have any effect for almost a week. And this is, I think, a very clear picture that we cannot try, or we should not try to win the battles of the 21st century with the technology of the 20th century. Because the game is on. The data that we want to work with will rise. Now we're talking about IoT, we're talking about connected devices. And by 2025, we expect to have like 75 billion devices connected, which are producing even more data. And I have no customer who's not talking about at least trying to do something with IoT, connected devices, all that stuff. But it's quite clear that this will run on empty if you are trying to collect data and have in the back end not the technology and the landscape to do something with one of these kinds of with this kind of data, because the legacy technology does not allow you to do anything with it. So there is no other choice than really to approach that topic. But like I said, there are also, like, of course, positive aspects to it. This was not really uplifting, I know, but let's look at it. We have, in my opinion, 5 levels of opportunities in a digitalized economy. Opportunities that something with like RISE with SAP enables us to do. And these are customer centricity, collaboration, agility, sustainability, and fully embracing efficiency and effectiveness. And if you look, for example, into customer centricity, we realize that the business model that we are coping with, and like, for example, our classic customers have to compete with, they're completely different from that way they used to. And they also have to embrace these kinds of possibilities. Like, for example, in the automotive area, I recently talked to an executive from a major German automotive OEM, and I asked him, like, why do you really stop to produce cheap cars? Like, even your baseline models are in a value area which is far above anything what you did like 10, 20 years ago, because they said, like, we are not making any money anymore with those small cars. We are going completely into different things. We want to build more expensive cars, but we want to go away from car ownership, where this would put us into issues because nobody would be able to afford them, but into mobility services where things look completely different. We sell rides, not cars. Or look, for example, into media. It's not about content ownership anymore. We have now something of a platform economy where the business model is the access to the customer. It's not the availability of the content anymore. Platforms like Netflix or Apple TV or Amazon Prime, they sometimes, of course, they have their own content, but they do not own all of their content. What they do own is the access to the customer, which makes them more or less the classic players in, or the new players in the media market, where the normal classic networks are running behind. Same with consumer products. Mass production is something of the past. since we are able now with our new technologies to really embrace the market to one, business model changed. One of my customers who is working in, he's a frozen good manufacturer. He's, for example, very clear about his strategy. He says like, yes, we make like 80% of our business still, which is our core business, with the commodity side, which is, for example, frozen vegetables or fish or something like this. But these are low margin things. And we want to, of course, grow in the other area, which is convenience food, like those frozen bami goreng that you are able to buy now in supermarkets. But what they are absolutely aware is that basically what these things are, nobody likes them. Nobody likes the taste of them because they are for full compromise. What their strategy for the future is to do a market to one and to embrace that fully, because now they're able like to offer you something of a configurator in the internet, or where they try to get known to your tastes, how spicy you like it, what kinds of ingredients you like. Are you a vegetarian, for example? And they will then prepare that meals in their factories for you, freeze it, send to you, so you have something like a individual meal that is 100% matching your tastes at home. So this is something which is really completely different, and it's opening up any gates. Again, this question is, are you able to cope with it or do this with legacy technology? No, you're not. Yeah, but if you want to be active in that area, and if you want to embrace these kinds of possibilities of customer centricity, you really have to jump on the new kind of technologies. And the other area, for example, where we have to look at is efficiency and effectiveness. And this is something which is, in my opinion, one very interesting part in working with applications digitalization. Because, you know, when you're talking, for example, to typical large enterprise companies, or like companies who have a certain age, and what we at Westernacher and SAP normally see as the mainstay of our customers, like companies who have a certain maturity. Yeah, of course, how do they run? They run on efficiency. That's how most of the KPIs are built off, or especially like IT departments are measured of. They're measured of efficiency. It's about like save costs. It's about doing things right. But if you look, for example, at young companies, they are completely working differently. When you look for a startup, he's not saying like I go into efficiency before I have earned the money. No, he's going about effectiveness. He's about doing the right thing. He's about increasing his top line revenue and profit by having the right business model. So we have on the one side the philosophy of run the company, of course, like a clockwork. But on the other side, we have that topic, transform the company, build on innovations and disruptive technologies, do the right thing, have the right business model, have the right ideas, be innovative. Is now one thing better than the other? No, but I think modern technologies, and that's what we offer with the RISE package, is something that enables you to combine those things and to run your business and your enterprise with both paradigms. And this means that on the efficiency side, you accelerate execution by a transformed approach, which is working with robotic process automatization and so on. You realize we are here on the left side, on the core business side that you see like in the charts before, 3 or 4 slides. But the same with automate processes or digitalized tasks. When you have now something that, for example, like the demand-driven replenishment that you can have with S/4HANA, you have now an automated application which is giving you each morning a clear picture about your demand situation and if your stocks are in the correct height. Like something that I did as a youngster, as a junior consultant 20 years ago, as a project, your system can now do it on a daily basis for you and improve your game in that aspect and digitalize this task in that aspect and giving you complete new capabilities in that task. On the effectiveness side, of course, you're doing different games. You are accelerating the speed of signal to action. You are delaying your process and you rise process intelligence. You are able to do the right thing because you win the insight of being able to know what the right thing to do is all about. And that into action part means that you also are able to realize it on the fly. Because insight to action, what does this mean? We'll come probably later to it again. Insight mean like, you know, from a glimpse or one look where you are, what your situation is. But having like good or bad news itself does not really help you if they are not telling you any consequences out of it. Like, I have bad news for you because probably the demand is more than you can deliver, but I have already a solution for you as a system, because I combine all the digital data sources and have predictive algorithms that I can offer you a solution for us via a simulation, things you were not able to do before. And now this is something that we're coming to my point, because digitalization is not continuing to do all the things you did in the past and just being able now to do it better because maybe of in-memory technology or because of HANA. But digitalization is all about being able to do things that you were not able to do before. And you should embrace these kinds of possibilities. Otherwise, you would jump short. Another part, of course, is the agility part. Agility brings resilience. That's something that we realized again in the last 12 months. If you were able to do certain things or you had certain capabilities, you were better off. And it means that there's now on the right side of this chart something of a numbering of different capabilities which are encompassing agility. But things like simulations, scenarios, self-organizing teams, interdisciplinary teams, which react like a living organism, because you work on actual data, because you're insight to action driven, so you get faster outcome and optimized decisions. Those are all things, like we said in the beginning, with fragmented information and batch orientation, you're not able to do. Yeah? Another part, collaboration. You know, in your private life, probably networks are having a huge impact of you. Yeah, probably you are around in social networks. Your career, of course, is probably accelerated by using social networks. Your private life, you win friends and maybe like lovers and wives and husbands via social networks. Social networks are affecting us in all our areas, and that also complies with us in our business life. If we look in how many of our customers already embrace that topic, is that they are basically behind in respect of that, how they embrace, of course, business networks, how they embrace networks in the private life. Because companies today who embrace business networks, who have learned that network sourcing, for example, using these kinds of elements, is giving them not only far more transparency of the market, but far more agility in getting the right things to a far better price from a, let's say, supply side. It's just one side. Winning completely new markets for selling is something which is completely different on the other side. So RISE with SAP, what we will learn is something that really prepares you to go that path and to fully leverage the possibilities there. And now I'm coming to the last point, it's sustainability. Because everybody today is talking about either being a sustainable company or becoming a sustainable company. And either you yourself have already KPIs that are measuring sustainability, or probably you have strategies, or maybe even like your government is forcing you to become more sustainable. And our linear economy, yeah, it's quite classical. Take, make, use, and dispose. And in the last years, we've grown something of a supply chain which had the producing part in the east, and it was more or less pushed to the west, where we were using and disposed it. And the solution for it, the circular economy, like collect, remake, and reuse, is not possible without digital enablers, without capabilities that you have not if you work with legacy technology like geospatial analysis, like material flow analysis, like automated impact assessment. And circular economy means all of that we connect with digitalized enterprises, where we're talking about new business models, about using, embracing big data with simulation, about reducing carbon footprint, all these kinds of information to be able to digest it and to be able to use it needs a completely different ball game. And this completely different ball game is, yeah, what RISE with SAP is all about. And I hope I gave you in this like first 30 minutes of the session a little bit of an overview why RISE with SAP, from my perspective, is not something that SAP thought about to, let's say, probably just from an economical standpoint, but which is also the right answer to the right questions that we have in this time, and that I hopefully in an interesting way painted a picture for you in the last 30 minutes. So that's the moment when I thank you for your attendance for the last 30 minutes, and I want now to give over to Martin, and I hope I will be able to make you a presenter.
Thank you, Alexander, for the last half hour. I think it was really interesting to hear the overall context and the story that led us to this. The parts I want to cover are specifically going into, I would say, the most common aspects of RISE with SAP, the usual questions that we get, and trying to answer those as precisely as possible within half an hour. So we will go through why do we do RISE, what is in it for the customer, what is in it for SAP, I think just to give you a perspective. Then going forward to what the offer actually is, the path to the cloud, how we get there, then the ownership of the stack, who does what, and then also we'll talk about the value and the benefits of RISE, and finally the concrete how to get there and the conclusion and conclude. And I want to start off with a quote of our CEO. It's some days old, but I think it really contains two aspects that that I like and that I highlighted on here, which is the aspect what is in it for the customer, which is really the move to the cloud combined with a true business transformation. And you talked a lot about that the last half hour, where we see that you should really consider not only the cloud flexibility element, but what also the new software in the cloud can bring to your business and how it can enable you. So that's the aspect of what is in it for the customers. But also it's, I think, important for our customers to understand where SAP is going. And this is where the statement is important, that we will accelerate our cloud move. We plan to actually triple the revenue in the cloud until in 2025, meaning we are all in cloud. So there is a clear strategic path and there is a clear direction. And this is also important for our customers so they can embark on this journey and be part of it. And this is why we created RISE with SAP, which is the offer that combines those elements, the most typical elements that will enable you to build the intelligent enterprise in the cloud. It consists of basically, and I'll use my laser pointer here, it consists of one bundle that puts together the typical elements that a business transformation requires from the software perspective. It runs on one contract where we combine all the services, the operations, and the handling of it, and it comes at a very strong TCO proposition compared to the on-premise deployment. And what is in it? So we have the SAP Business Network in there. There's a starter pack in there to allow you to connect your customers and suppliers, really connecting the enterprises together, creating an integration between different companies. It contains the business process intelligence, which is ultimately the software element from our acquisition of Signavio, which will provide you deep insights into your processes and allows you to discover optimization potential, supporting your business transformation, and maybe even helps you identify new potential for adjustments and improvements to get more efficient or to do things completely differently. Then in the middle, our real core application, so the S/4HANA Cloud application, which is the full capabilities that you get in our core, and we provide it through two different models. One is more towards simplified, very standardized deployment, or the other option also is basically the direct migration of your existing S/4HANA into the cloud, so that you can move faster as well if you want to do the cloud move first. But we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. And then the business technology platform, allowing you to, on the one hand side, start connecting the systems, for example, through the cloud platform integration, but also to allow you to build side-by-side extensions and to keep the SAP core clean of modifications and all these innovation prohibitors that we have in former times that have been built into the system. So really keep those on the side and use the technologies on the platform to also infuse AI or machine learning or bots to drive further automation and efficiencies. And we run all this on the provider of choice, as we call it here, which is basically one of our three hyperscaler partners that can be Azure, AWS, or GCP. And those are embedded in the contract. So SAP is taking the full ownership of the stack, and you don't have to worry about which hyperscaler is better or how do I run on a hyperscaler. This is embedded in the service and we run it for you. And to make all that happen, we provide additional tools and services like the readiness check, helping with custom code migration as well, and provide access to the Learning Hub to enable your people as well to use the new software, the new implementation that you can do here. One important point is the part that is not included is the actual migration efforts. So the professional services engagement. This is where you can, and this is why I'm also speaking here. This is where you really also can work with partners, for example, with Westernacher and their expertise to help you build this path and to really get this properly set up, get a good strategy around it, and really get your business transformation story supported by the IT. Now, how do we, on a high level, how can you build or how do you plug together a strategy to the cloud? And that would be with two ways, really working through the standardization element of it, and then later on also benefiting from the modularization that we get in the cloud later on. Important from my perspective is really to start off with a proper strategy that not only looks at IT transformation, but that also looks at how your business is evolving. That you have that in mind right away, because otherwise you just migrate old things without a plan to build a new. And this is where Westernacher or SAP directly or can then really help you to build this path and build a strategy that we can follow. And from there, you can basically go into two different ways. You either start with a lift and shift, which is if you really just you have a data center contract ending or things like that, and you need to move fast into the cloud, we can do a pure lift and shift and then migrate to S/4HANA afterwards and do the business transformation in a second step. This might also be a risk reducing factor. So we support both approaches, but we want to highlight that always have the S/4HANA and the business transformation in mind, but you can do it in a one-step or in a two-step approach. Also consider, the other big aspect of it could be a complete business transformation where you also do system consolidation. So maybe a bit of a more long-term scenario. And here it's important that we have a good migration strategy in place with data transition and probably near zero downtime technologies to make sure that your business is not shut down for too long. And there is also an aspect of the solutions that will get towards end of life. And when we are thinking about, I usually use the example of APO, we should include this in the overall strategy, that we then consider, okay, can we run this with integrated business planning? Can we use the new features and technology there to really do the next step in this area. And also, one factor that we will that we always consider and that we work with you is to make sure that whatever, if you have already a hyperscaler strategy and you have already third-party applications running on a hyperscaler, we will check that we probably co-locate, if necessary, those applications in the same data center where you would run the core application for reasons of basically ping or delays in the transmission. So here we have then finally, and this is where the enablement comes in. So you're now enabled for the intelligent enterprise, and you can then really build your innovation extensions, run the technology also on the business technology platform, and then going forward as well, there is a huge investments from SAP also in the industry cloud to really deliver simple but industry-specific innovation in an easy-to-consume fashion in the cloud. And as mentioned, all of this runs in a software subscription framework through the transition, but also in the run phase, and is embedding one of the 3 hyperscalers that we have selected for this journey. Now, who does what? You know, like, okay, you decide to go there, so who does what in the future? So if you compare the application stack from infrastructure, running the system, licensing, and functional application management, I really keep it very simple here on the slide, going from operating system database, high availability, and disaster recovery setup. This is normally how a typical customer situation looks today. You probably have different partners. You probably have or want to go to a hyperscaler. You have SAP somewhere, and maybe you do things yourself, or you have another partner doing it. This is the typical on-premise hyperscale setup. And what we are doing with RISE and also with the private cloud is then taking over the run system, the licensing, and we take over the management of the hyperscaler. And you still can run the functional applications yourself if that's what you want to do, and do the ticket management yourself. But we also offer this from our cloud application services, but this is your choice up here. So you can see that here we really combine everything in a software subscription, which is a lot more flexible than the traditional on-premise upfront and then support, where you probably have shelfware sitting around, and you can more flexibly adjust your usage. Basically, based on your usage, you can adjust your licensing and your software subscription based on that, and you will get the relevant hardware and operations elements combined into it. So that enables you to get rid of the CapEx investment, and also takes out the whole element of organizing a partner to do this. And this is really also a trend that we see in the IT industry, to have the software supplier take ownership of their own software and to make sure they can run it properly. And what does it bring you? What's the benefit? What's the value for you in this? We've talked about all these elements here on the left side on the earlier slide. That's what is all in it, and you get those 2 high-level sources of value. One is really the business value creation through the business transformation, where we enable the industry best and next practices throughout ticking a lot of the KPIs that will make your CFO happy, and also the CEO. And the second element is the TCO element of the cloud, the CapEx OpEx element of the cloud, that will allow you to generate a faster time to value in the cloud delivery through the cloud delivery model. And this is also where you can see then, like on the earlier slide, if you have, if you're looking at a pure TCO case, you only get the B. And if you're looking at a business transformation combined, then you look at A and B. Now break it down a little bit further and on what especially the A can be, so the business value, and how that can work for you and how you can also build the case for yourself and for your company to generate the business case to make this journey happen. As mentioned earlier, one of the core elements that this is centered around is, and I'm picking out the private edition. We also have the standard S/4HANA Cloud as well. But if you're looking for more feature richness and you're looking for probably a brownfield migration, then the private edition is the right way to go. So I focus on this slide. I'll focus on the private edition. So what does it bring you? It's ultimately has the full scope, same as your on-premise systems, supporting all 25 industries. We have over 60 country and region versions, broad language support. So you don't have to reduce your expectations when you go to the cloud, but rather can continue operating in the same area, same countries, etc. But also the element of the strategic nature, where here now you can take over your existing systems where you think it makes sense, where you probably have already a good installation, a good system set up, where you say, okay, this is good enough to continue in the cloud. This is where we can now also do brownfield migrations. So we don't have to start completely from scratch like we would have to do in the classic S/4HANA cloud. And then the other aspect is the technical side of things as well. You have the full S/4HANA extensibility framework. We enable and allow code modifications. We don't recommend it though, but it will not stop you if there is one or two that you have to do that you, I don't know, can't work around. This will not stop you, so you can still do the more modification elements. But as said, it's not recommended. We still recommend to follow our so-called golden rules in the cloud to make sure that the core is stable, because it will allow us to do upgrades much easier and much faster. And that ultimately means less cost, and it ultimately means faster innovation cycles. And then we have the operational benefits, where because we built on the hyperscalers, we are leveraging the hyperscaler benefits. We have very good contractual frameworks with them in terms of also the commercial setup. And that allows you to provide to you a resilient setup that also provides a cost benefit overall. Now, going more into the detail, what the business transformation value can be. And this is an overview of an example industry where we go through, where we really go through the different aspects of it: top line, bottom line, green line, and the strategic elements. And here you can see the applications and how they tick the different boxes. So it's really meant to be an overview that shows you on how you can translate the business transformation element, the cloud element, the solutions into and basically where it ticks the boxes, where it ticks the KPIs on the value tree. And I'll talk about this a bit more on the next slide. But it's really important to bring this aspect in, because a pure hyperscaler move does the TCO trick, but it doesn't do the top line trick, and it doesn't do a really significant bottom line trick. And also sustainability was mentioned earlier. So to bring all these pieces together, this is where we can provide the value, and we have to really identify it to make sure that you can build a proper business case. And this is where we suggest always as part of this to build up a value case where we go through improvement potentials, business areas, IT cost reductions, and build up this value tree similar to this example on the right hand side. And look, based on the previous slide or on other data that we have, look at the IT benefits, the IT value drivers, and show basically your management and your executives on how RISE with SAP can improve your finance value tree, and put those pieces together over time, how it develops, but also the end state to demonstrate the benefits. And if you are interested in this, definitely reach out to your account executive or to your account manager from SAP to talk through that. But also many consulting firms are supporting with that out there. And definitely also Westernacher. And then I have one technical element just to round it off. Now, if you say, okay, I'm sold on this, I understand, I want to do this. So how do I actually do this? I wanted to bring one very concrete slide as well in terms of the approaches on how we can get you there. So we have one element that is really the reusing element. When you say, okay, in general, my core application is fine, the setup is nice, it still works for me, then we can do pure system conversion and basically bring you into the private cloud as is, but upgraded on the latest S/4HANA release. This doesn't bring the business transformation element, but it might well be that you are already on S/4HANA, you probably already went through this process, and you just look at the cloud element. So that would be the part where we would consider this approach. And then you have the business transformation element, and this is where you can go two ways. Either you go towards a new implementation, or you are using selective data transition, where you basically pull out the necessary data from your existing systems and you plug it into the new greenfield system. For the new implementation, when you're starting greenfield, you can also decide between public cloud and private cloud. If you want to go lowest TCO, full standardization, higher frequency of innovation shipment, then you can you should definitely consider the public cloud option, or we also now just call it S/4HANA Cloud, but just to distinguish it a bit clearer. Or then if you need the full scope, full language support, full country scope, then private cloud is the way to go. And here you can basically start a classical greenfield and then start fresh. But as mentioned, the selective data transition is then when you would be able to also feed in the data and plug the data in from different sources into probably one consolidated system. So you can do system consolidations or things like that are of more complex nature. So depending on your situation and based on your enterprise architecture vision and on your business transformation vision, you probably should fit into one or maybe two approaches, and then you can decide on those, on how you drive it forward. Also here, you can definitely reach out to your account executive to get a bit more insight into how this can be done. And I just wanted to show and conclude with an overview of the why, but also what we provide. And one of the elements is the end-to-end service level agreement that SAP provides for the full solution stack. You don't have to manage different parties, different ticket response times and things like that. We measure the availability of the system, meaning people being able to work on it and being able to log on ultimately. and all the things, all the detail and complexity is hidden behind it. We run on a scalable landscape, so we leverage the hyperscaler capabilities, and we make sure that the performance is there when we need it. We have a simplified contractual framework, one contract, one SLA, support framework is unified, and then also the innovation platform. I talked quite a lot about this. The big element as well is the security and the transparency and compliance. SAP really takes accountability in this model, and in a normal outsourcing model, you still carry the accountability if something happens. But now this system is under SAP's ownership, and we rent it out to you. So there is a different level of accountability that we have, and we fulfill a whole list of certifications and security audits to make sure that we provide the most secure offering here. And yeah, all in all, it's definitely also predictable and more flexible than the classic model. And you see that we are running this in this layout and this setup. We run this already for more than 4,600 customers, 4,600 databases, 1,400 plus customers, running on the same architecture, which is also important. It's a high level of standardization, and that brings us to a really high availability of those systems in real life, in the actual availability. And yeah, with this, I would like to conclude and thank you for attention, and looking forward, maybe you have some questions and for the further discussion.
Thank you very much, Martin. Maybe what I want to add, because I think this is a very strong message that you sent, even with the last slide, is basically there is no reason not to go to the cloud anymore. Yeah, because in the beginning, you were sometimes quite in a situation that you really have to give the reasons why you should go to the cloud. I think now we can turn that coin around. There's no reason anymore not to go into the cloud. You have solved the scope issue, because scope was something that we, of course, have with the public cloud. We have a limited scope here. This was solved with a private cloud where we have full scope. And we have the transitions topic solved, because in the past, a cloud project always was something of a greenfield. You could not migrate into the cloud. So this was, to be honest, yes, for some, especially large enterprise customers, a knockout criteria and a showstopper. Now you can do brownfields, you can do selective transitions into the cloud. Yeah, there's no reason anymore not to do it.
Absolutely, I would even say quite the opposite, because the overall industry is moving, and staying behind on an outdated license model is not a great idea. I mean, and you mentioned Netflix buying videos, and that is also out of fashion. So definitely subscription model and renting really only what you need is definitely top of mind of a lot of IT executives.
Oh, wonderful. I want to spend the last 5 to 7 minutes before we go into the questions with a topic which I think is really necessary. Otherwise, this whole topic would not be complete. I think hopefully you see my screen, because it's basically like what are the things we can do for you? Does this mean digitalization is an on-off switch now? And of course, it's not. You still need to do the right things, and you need to do the right decisions. What I think is quite important, I'm afraid that my screen is unshared. No, there it is again. What I quite often see, and even in my past at SAP, that there was quite often done a mistake, and this kind of mistake really was keeping customers from achieving the full power of the digitalization. I want to tell you this with the cell phone analogy I quite often use. The cell phone analogy says that if you look on the left side, you see, which is basically, or was my phone I used in 2005. It was Sony Ericsson, which I really enjoyed. You had battery power for about a week. You had always great quality in your connections. You could listen to some music on it because it was a Walkman, and you could do some pixelated photos on it. So I was very happy with that phone. I was, of course, what from now perspective in a legacy technology, but I was happy. But why did I work with that phone the way I did? Because I wanted to do it? No, because the limitations of that technology of 2005 did not allow any other way to work with it. And the same thing is happening with ECC. Why do our ECC customers work like they do with ECC? Because they want it. Yeah, in quite often you may hear this kind of answers, or like customers may say, yes, because of industry specifics and so on. I think we should look at this from a different perspective. We work in our legacy technologies because the legacy technology and the limitations of it do not allow any other way to work. Because look at the mobile phones again. On the right side, you see an iPhone. This is basically what you would get when you have an S4, total new capabilities. So how in your private life do you embrace these kinds of capabilities on an iPhone? You look, for example, oh, great, location-based services. That's a fantastic new capability. Now I do not get lost anymore doing my mountain biking in the forest when I'm in the woods. Or, for example, when you're a single, location-based service is perfect. I can now do something like Tinder or anything else like this. So you fully embrace it on a capability basis. But weirdly, we do not work in our professional world that way, because so many digital initiatives are going that way that we discuss, or we used to discuss with the customer what he exactly does in his legacy technology, then to explain him how he can achieve exactly that in the new technology, which means that instead of fully embracing the capabilities, we bring the limitations and the guardrails of the old technology in the new world. And that's why there are digitalization adopters who are absolutely not bringing the horsepower of digitalization to the street. And you need a partner who takes care of that you do not do this mistake. Which means, for example, that what I call the right approach is really the paradigm of your digitalization. Also when working with RISE with SAP, because the first paradigm is definitely do a forward-looking discussion. That's what we were talking about. Digitalization, RISE with SAP, S4HANA, it's not an IT topic, it's a business topic. So you have to link your strategy on it. You have to discuss your strategy with your partner, and your partner then has, of course, to align his roadmap along your strategy with it. So that's why, for example, I quite often just listen the first time I met a customer. I say, no, I do not want to fall into the house by, let's say, showcasing you features and functions and so on. I want to know more about you. What's your strategy? What have you learned, for example, in the last years? That what are capabilities you need in the next years? Like, what is your strategy? What do you want to be able to do? And based on this kind of talk and be able to know the strategy, you then can derive the needed capabilities out of it. You then can, in the last step, show the customer an landscape that or the solution that is able to give him that kind of capabilities, which then in the end is able to pull his strategy to full effect. That also means that talk to business level, C-level about business. When digitalization is a business topic, and I think there's nothing more strategic than basically pulling out the spine of a company and replacing it with a new one. So this is a topic at C-level, and that's why we always try to embark it as such, as with C-level involvement, with clear strategic guidance and clear support. And then, of course, is keep it simple, avoid self-made complications, use package solutions like, for example, RISE with SAP, because this makes digitalization feasible for you. SAP has done a lot of it, and we are absolutely in the position together with SAP to help you with that. So I want to jump to the end to be able to come to your questions. Westernacher Consulting definitely wants to be your premier value partner. We are available globally. We have 650. I think we are already around 700 experts globally available to guide you, to take you with the hand, and to walk the path of digitalization with you, because our mission and our vision is to be your partner that brings the power of digitalization fully to the street with you. And that's why I'm happy to be able to, together with Martin, to go on to your questions. And there have been already quite a lot, because that's why I was accelerating in the end. I want to jump immediately on the first one. Martin, maybe this one is a little bit rooted at you. Does the RISE with SAP offering point more at existing SAP users, or do you see this more for possible net new name users?
I think it's yeah, the good news, it's both. We see actually a lot of traction in the net new name space, I have to say. Definitely, most of those are companies that are looking at a complete revamp or a complete redesign of their IT landscape, and that's definitely a good aspect. But we also see a huge interest in existing in the installed base, where customers really want to do the next step in the cloud, but they are a bit unsure in terms of whether they want to continue with the on-premise licensing. They probably have to do still they want to order and buy some more innovation from us, and then this combined often leads to a good discussion that also goes towards cloud.
Yeah, absolutely agree. The next question, I think it's a quite interesting question, because it's in the right point. I'm not so sure if it gets the right consequence out of it, because it's about the bundling. And of course, I think the bundling is a very good thing, because in the past, necessary things you need for a good digital impact, like for example the combination of S/4HANA on the one side and the the SAP Cloud Platform / technology platform, to have it together, because then you are able to realize what we talked about in the beginning, to have on the one side these kinds of innovative area where you do new things, and on the other side that powerful backbone who is able to automate your core business. That was not really often sold or adopted together, but that was taken apart. The packaging, of course, keeps you from doing that. But the question is saying, from a licensing standpoint, is a RISE package cheaper than the sum of its ingredients? And can the price be modified by out-selecting elements of the package?
Yes, so exactly. So I mean, the bundle definitely has a price advantage, and however, if customers have already larger installations of the business technology platform, they might still be interested in the other items. But if you have a broad adoption of the additional elements, then we can definitely deselect some of those to make it more cost effective for you. But this usually, we do this usually in the process when we discuss it. But it's important that we provide the bundle in general to show also to bring clarity to our customers on how we see the world, how we see the future, and what we think is the right combination of tools. But with this also, Alexander, I think we have a lot of questions in the tool, and especially Pierre, I think it's Pierre-François, I'm not sure if Francis, but Francis, that we probably go through those as well. There are some good questions in here.
Absolutely. Let's start with the top one. Are there restrictions regarding code modifications or customization in existing ECC systems when customer onboard RISE? Will this impact SLAs? What will happen with these code changes, customization, when customer decides to convert to S/4HANA? Assuming customer will select a two-step journey, lift and ship first, S/4HANA conversion later. Well, I think this topic is really not about RISE. This topic is more about the application, because restrictions regarding code modification or customizations and so on does not really attack the bundle, or is not really a cover or part of the bundle, but it's part of the application. Like, what are you running? If you, for example, are running on the public cloud model, yes, there are restrictions regarding code modifications, because you cannot modify code. You can customize to a certain event when you go to public cloud, but you cannot do code modifications. You would have to do these kinds of modifications in a separate instance you get with a RISE package with a technology platform. It's a little bit different with the private cloud. In the private cloud, you are more free, you're more open, but still, again, there is the technology platform also available, I always try to convince my customers that it's a good idea to try to get as many, if not all, of their individualizations out of the ERP itself into the technology platform for several reasons. On the one hand, the core gets clean, the core gets easy, and you have definitely TCO advantages there. On the other hand, when you want to embrace like mobility capabilities, so that you are able to use your Fiori apps, for example, also on mobile devices, you anyway would have to go via the technology platform route to be able to fully embrace the possibilities. So it's more of a application question, not a RISE question from my position. And concerning modifications itself, you always should consider putting them or pulling them out of the application and into the technology platform.
Yeah, but I think it's also important because the question also was whether it impacts SLA. So no, it doesn't. We keep the SLA at 99.7, but if a customer modification, because the ownership of the customer modification stays with the customer, as a matter of fact. So if this one would bring down the system, then we would definitely talk about it. And also during the upgrade, it stays a customer responsibility. So we don't take ownership of the modification, but that's definitely why we don't encourage it, but it is possible in both options, whether it's a two-step approach or one-step approach, it's possible.
And by the way, considering the two-step approach, again, when you are watching or when you look into the aspect concerning restrictions or modifications, the RISE itself, when you say like you're putting your ECC onto with the RISE onto the first package, or the lift, sorry, the lift is the correct word. There is not really, that's not really that step that affects the modification. It's affected then when you do that shift onto the S4HANA application where this comes in hand. The second question that was asked here, like, are there solution components not supported by RISE? Compatibility pack goes into the same directions. Again, this is not a part or a topic concerning RISE, but this is a topic concerning your choice within RISE for which kind of flavor concerning your cloud offering you want to use. If you have, for example, the public cloud chosen, then yes, there are solution components which are not supported because compatibility packs are not part of the public cloud solution. They are, though, of the private cloud solution. So again, if you need something out of the compatibility packs, then this affects not really your RISE decision, but the decision within RISE for the correct choice of application.
Yeah, and also in general, you can say everything that is in mainstream maintenance with SAP is supported. So that's probably a shorter answer as well. And I had one more point that I think is really one question that's further down that I think is really important, and I didn't touch on it. It's the licensing model, whether it is licensed through one single material number or multiple items. In general, you would still you would license the enterprise management, which is really the core application. And we introduced a new licensing model, which is based on full user equivalence. This allows you also to shift more easily between, let's say, a more intense user or lightweight user at your own will. Basically, you can define within this FUE model how many of those are professional users, how many are lightweight users. But you can also switch it during the time. So this is a really flexible model. And in addition, based on the business transformation and the cases that you want to implement and the features you want to implement, there is additional so-called S4 cloud engines. And I showed some of those on the value slide, and those can be licensed in addition. Those are additional features, so to say, that you can switch on.
Exactly.
So one example would be things like entitlement management or advanced variant configuration and so on. So there is different items that can be licensed in addition, transportation management as well, or extended warehouse management.
Exactly. Two questions from Pierre Francis. Now we will go to one question from Jan, who was asked, like, is RISE license we have one single material number from the price list, or does the RISE contract comprise of multiple line items?
Yeah, that's what I just went through. So I think that's answered. And exactly. We have another one from Thomas Burkhardt. Is RISE deployed in SAP's own data center? Yeah, so we have the focus of RISE is really the hyperscaler deployment, and also something that we call the customer data center option. So there is different flavors of how we can deploy it, but the main option is the hyperscalers. We have then an offering that is more, I would say, more a la carte, more customized, let me say it like this, where we can offer to run your S4 applications also on our data center, or as mentioned in a customer data center option. But there is, in principle, hyperscaler is the main choice.
One question is, will SAP share with partners the RISE TCO tool? As far as I know, they do. Maybe Martin, you can correct me in that aspect. Why I think this question is quite interesting, because I'm a little bit careful concerning that aspect, because I think a TCO tool in the RISE aspect can be a little bit of a false friend. And I'll tell you why. The TCO, of course, of RISE is only attacking one side of the whole benefits of the RISE value itself, which is the TCO part. The TCO part goes exactly in what we had in the beginning, in the first session, talking about efficiency. Yeah, because TCO is all about efficiency. It's about running your costs low, running your things smooth, and so on. What the TCO tool, of course, is not attacking is that what we had in the beginning, like the application value. Like, for example, when you go on S4HANA and you are able to do completely new things, you are able to do completely new business models. You are able to, for example, approach completely different customers. This is nothing that the TCO tool, of course, is able to apply into its calculations. So when you are using the TCO tool, always be aware and always like communicate it very clearly that it shows just the aspect of one side, which is the TCO aspect. There is much more value in it. What, of course, is not being able by a tool to be leveraged, but this is, of course, part of strategic discussions, as part of workshops that we have to do together, where we then go to your strategy, where we then align with you on the possibilities that we have on and what the new capabilities can give to you. Like, for example, what we were talking about with the one customer I had from the frozen foods area, when they are, because of RISE and because of S4HANA, are able to encompass completely new business model. This is nothing which is, of course, enveloped within a TCO tool. TCO tool is about total cost of ownership. That's one part that can give you the information about it, but please never, never, never say that this is the value of RISE, because the value is so much more than just a TCO tool is able to comprise. Good.
Nothing to add, yeah.
Perfect. Next question was
the BPI. I think maybe let's talk about the BPI.
Yeah, let's take this one.
Yeah, so BPI component is essential and key differentiator. Yes, definitely. Will RISE go beyond the current light touch self-assessment? And yes, so will Signavio be included in the subscription? Yes, so we the intention is, and I think it has happened already. I'm not sure I have the very latest, but the intention is exactly to include the BPI component, as I mentioned, that was that came in through the acquisition of Signavio, and added as an additional analysis element to it. But definitely, it's not probably not the full scope that we provide. So it's more, as mentioned, more like a light touch starting point. But it should be able to provide you already good insight. But it is really a central, and that's also what you mentioned here. It's really a central element of the RISE messaging, because we believe that the insight and the process data mining is a really critical element for continuous improvement, but also for larger transformational insights.
Yes, and I to be honest, I a little bit disagree with that assessment that that this is a light touch self-assessment, what it's available at the beginning, because it's, in my opinion, more, and it's for those customers who are at this moment embarking on the RISE journey, it is the right tool to have, because it's about the self-assessment of their actually, let's say, case concerning their S/4HANA approach. Yes, of course, there is no data mining in it yet, because this will come with Signavio, and of course, also more things like, for example, the data design possibility or the process design possibilities. But this is something for those customers who have started now with RISE, is not that 100% relevant anyway. So from my perspective, since Signavio is not yet fully integrated with the RISE offering, there is not much lost, to be honest. When customers are in that stage within their RISE journey to fully embark the benefits that with the BPI Signavio combination is, as far as I've understood from my last informations, the full scope of BPI/Signavio will be available. Good. Have we forgotten something yet? RISE can help with cost. How is the benefit side different between RISE and on-premise for running on hyperscaler outside of RISE?
I mean, definitely the benefit side from if you look at the pure features is the same, right? I mean, whether you implement a certain feature on premise and use it or in the cloud, there is no difference. But it is more the aspect of making sure that you renew your basically your processes with the cloud move together, and that you leverage the faster time to value that you get from the cloud, and that you get rid of the upfront invest. So it's more about that aspect, but also about the standardization aspect that comes with cloud, because on premise there is still always a bit of creeping in of customization, and therefore you have usually, it feels like you have more control, but as an actual fact, or on-premise customers usually over time, customization or modifications creep in.
Absolutely. And I think an aspect what's also very important, if we just see it from that cost perspective, which is the efficiency perspective, we of course lose all the, let's say, strategic part from the, like we already said, from the business model area. What I sometimes like to compare RISE to, I'm not sure if everybody from my old friends at SAP likes this kind of comparison, but in Germany we had like 20 years ago when the plasma televisions, the big one, appeared. Lots of people, of course, were going on it, bought these kinds of huge televisions and so on, and say, oh, I can have something like a home cinema there. And then in the beginning, they found out, no, this is not yet it, because they realized that things are missing for the full experience of, let's say, a home cinema equipment, which means, like, for example, the sound was not good enough. And on the other hand, like the picture also was not good enough, because they all had just like VHS cassette decks. There was one retailer in Germany who reacted against it by saying, like, we sell you a capability, we sell you an experience by giving you a package which is giving you all you need to have this kinds of experience and to be able to go on that journey. And which was like the plasma television plus a fitting equipment, like, for example, the audio part, and also a DVD player who was fully putting the power or was fully leveraging the visual power of the television. So RISE in an aspect is not too unsimilar to that, because it's also about giving you all the ingredients you need to have a certain experience. So I think if you compare this to a, let's say, on-premise hyperscaler, which is not so much anything else than just like an outsourced on-premise run, you're basically comparing apples with peas, in my opinion, and that is something you really have to be careful about, because it can be misleading, in my opinion. Good. Have we anything else?
I think we're good.
Perfect. Martin, thank you very much for joining us. It was a pleasure. I think it's going to be also a short week for you.
Yes, it is.
With the Father's Day approaching us, one last question, of course, when people want to know more about RISE, of course, they can reach out to us at Westernacher. They can reach out to you. Where are the best channels, of course, to get the best information on the SAP side about RISE?
Yeah, definitely. Partner manager, account executive, or contact me directly, and we'll find the right person for you.
Thank you very much, Martin. It was great to have you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thank you all for listening in.
Thank you very much.